Hi, this is Sergeant Betsy Brantner Smith with the National Police Association, and this is the NPA report. I have a chief of police with me today that I have wanted you to meet for quite a while because he's a man that I have admired. And so I think you'll really enjoy his perspective on so many of the policing issues that we talk about every week here on the NPA report, and then also the things that we talk about in the media about how to support the American law enforcement officer. So I want to welcome to the show Chief Darren Goodman from the San Bernardino, California Police Department. Chief, thanks for spending time with us.
Thank you, Betsy. It's a pleasure to be here.
So you weren't just born being a police chief. I want folks to know about your whole law enforcement career. So tell us about your career.
I certainly was not born being a police chief, and quite frankly, had no idea that it would ever happen for me. I was one of those street cops. And in fact, I started my career at the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department. And back in 1991, 92, I worked there for 27 years. I worked a variety of assignments. I worked patrol, obviously. I worked as a detective. I worked SWAT. I worked narcotics, and matriculated up the ranks and retired as a captain after 27 years. I got lured into considering a job as a police chief for the city of Upland, California, which is in San Bernardino County, but probably about a half hour from where I was used to working in San Bernardino proper. Worked there for about 4 years, in my first stint as a chief. And then about a year ago, I got offered a job with the city of San Bernardino, so I accepted. For me, it was like coming back home, considering I did most of my career in San Bernardino County and working for the Sheriff's Department, where the San Bernardino Police Department is located is literally just blocks away from the Sheriff's headquarters where I grew up working.
So you became a cop in the early 90s when things were really bad. Yes. Crime was high in the United States. We were losing, and everybody talks about how bad it is now. Cops are getting shot, killed. We got a lot of ambushes. But in the early 90s, we had more cops getting killed. Right. What made you want to go into police work?
I have to say it was a fluke. I wasn't the kid who wanted to be a cop growing up. I didn't necessarily have that as my desire. My parents were business people. My mother owned a beauty shop, and my dad had a construction company, and that's what I was supposed to do, by their plan for me. But things just transpired where I went to college, didn't finish, and was going back and forth with what I was going to do with myself, and worked real estate, had all sorts of odd jobs, construction, dabbling in the family business. And if you remember back in the mid to late 80s, I believe it was, when we had the big crash, the economic collapse, so to speak. I needed a job, and I wanted to do something that gave me stability. But in my mind, even as I started looking at city jobs and county jobs, being a police officer wasn't really on my mind. I'll never forget back then you had to actually go down to the human resources office. Everything wasn't online yet, right? And so I go down and I'm asking for the list of jobs that are available. And so they give me this list, and it's like a maintenance electrician. And then there was this deputy sheriff trainee. Well, I literally had to ask the lady, well, what is that? I didn't know what a deputy sheriff trainee was. I knew what a police officer was, but a deputy sheriff trainee was not in my vocabulary at the time. And so she explained that it was akin to being a police trainee, but just for the Sheriff's Department. So I said, well, I'll sign up for it, and I'll fill out the application and see what happens. But, as soon as this economic situation's over, I'll go back to doing my real estate. Well, long story short, I get into the academy after going through the process, and I excelled. I had a penchant for it. I loved it. I was, fairly academically proficient, so that wasn't a problem for me. I was an athlete, so the physical part wasn't a problem for me. and I believed in what I was doing, and I fell in love with it. So the rest is history. I never looked back, never wanted to do anything else, and I just sort of felt like this was my calling.
Do you think individualism is getting lost in not just in law enforcement, but in today's society?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, and not just individualism, which is certainly an appropriate context to what I'm about to say. But I think the other part of individualism is personal accountability. I think that's the part that's most dangerously being lost. When it's easier to blame everyone else for your problems, then it's impossible to focus on self-improvement because there's no acknowledgement of one's own responsibilities and own ability to impact change.
So what do you say to somebody? I mean, you've arrested a lot of bad guys in your career. What do you say to a bad guy or a bad girl who says, look, it's not my fault. I committed this crime because I'm poor. I was from a single parent family. I wasn't breastfed long enough when I was 2, whatever. What's your answer to people like that?
Well, it's BS, of course. And I think that's, quite frankly, a slap in the face to good, hardworking poor people. There's a lot of poor people who don't commit crime. There's a lot of poor people who, will go without and make sacrifices, but still are able to obey the law and not become a criminal. My family, didn't always have a lot, being, small business owners back in the 60s in Texas. Things weren't always fair and things were definitely not easy. But committing crime was never an option.
So I have to ask you, you became the chief of police of San Bernardino right in the middle of this 3-year demonization and vilification of the American law enforcement officer. What were you thinking?
I don't know. I'll tell you, a lot of people ask me that, and there's a lot of people who want me to go get checked out. But again, I think that what I was thinking was the same thing all of us who put on the uniform and wear the badge think, is that we want to make a difference. There's no cop worth their salt who still suits up and boots up that's not doing it because it matters, or because it doesn't matter. Rather, they're doing it because they know it matters. And so nothing's changed for me. I still get excited about this job. I still get excited about, the ability to, take crooks off the streets. Even though I'm not out there doing it every day, I have a fantastic team of people who do that. Living vicariously through them and watching, us transform this city one arrest at a time, one change at a time, and not every change is brought about through arrest. We do a lot of community outreach. We are able to impact lives, through our civic engagement, and that matters. That matters a lot.
Well, let's talk about that because, right now, most American police departments are incredibly shorthanded. Around the country, we've seen a lot of police departments who were defunded, who had money taken out of their budgets. And when money is taken away, the two things that tend to get destroyed are training, which I know you've been intimately involved in, and also community policing. So how do we reach our communities and restore that confidence while we're dealing with more crime and less cops?
Well, that's a complex answer because you can't do it all, honestly. If you don't have the support of your community, of your councils, and when I say support, I'm talking about the funding that goes with being able to fill vacant positions. I'm talking about the philosophical support, that goes with breaking the cycle of demonization, and let's get back to some normalcy and a middle ground. And that middle ground is understanding that, yes, cops are imperfect, just like every other profession is imperfect. We do make mistakes, but the notion that we need to throw out, everything and start over, or get rid of all of the things that allow us to be effective And that effectiveness, by the way, is determined by community trust. That our effectiveness is determined by how much the community still allows us to be in charge of them and in charge of their personal safety. So when we lose legitimacy because we have politicians and others who are demonizing us and questioning our validity, then now we lose our ability to effectively provide the safety that people expect and deserve. So that part by itself is almost worse than taking away police budgets, because by delegitimizing what we do and delegitimizing our industry, you don't have to take away the budget anymore because no one wants to join policing.
What do you think it's going to take to change that? Because again, I travel around this country and there is not a chief or a sheriff that I talk to that is not having staffing issues. And a lot of them are significant. I mean, 5%, 10%, 20% and more deficit in staff. There's not enough cops.
Yeah. Betsy, I'll tell you, I almost want to knock on wood here because I'm actually fortunate that we're doing very well with recruitment, and filling our positions has been very fluid. We've not had a lull in that.
So I need to tell everybody, go to San Bernardino. So you telling me?
Please do tell everyone. Little ad here comes to San Bernardino. But right now we're authorized for 297 positions. That's our budget allocation. And I have 277 officers, so I'm very close, to my budget capacity. But back to your question, what can we do to fix it? I think that, it will take a holistic approach. All of the people who are a part of causing this steep decline and causing, this divide between cops and community, all of us need to be a part of fixing it. We have a role to play. We have to police ourselves better. We have to own our mistakes better. But at the same time, those people who use, real issues as an opportunity for political agendas and manipulated, public sentiment by only focusing on the bad and manipulating numbers, manipulating issues, those people are just as responsible for this. And until we have, all of those people at the table, so to speak, or acknowledging that, we can't get better as a society without law and order in place, I think we'll continue to have much of the same.
Well, on that note, how did modern policing, do you think, get so politicized? I mean, we can go back and look at history, look at the 60s, and some of the huge mistakes law enforcement made and how political things got, and then you go to the 70s and into the 80s, and then in the 90s it got political again, and then it even kind of evened out. And now, in my lifetime, I have never seen policing so politicized. How did we get here, and what are we going to do about it?
I wish I could pinpoint it. I can't, but I do agree with you. It's more politicized than I've ever seen it too, and I've been around over 30 years. I think if I had to take a guess at it, it would be based on, just the perfect storm of societal, social, and economic issues. When we look at, some of the economic issues facing a lot of the cities, obviously budgets are at the top of the list of woes for most municipalities. And we're an easy target when you look at the fact that police budgets, occupy the majority of most municipal budgets. So that makes us a target politically. It's an easy political talking point to say, I'm going to run for office and I'm going to reduce the police budget. So that's part one. Then when you look at, some of the social dynamics, police, when we're in the era of, social change and everything is hyper focused on race. Well, police have had a history that's one that is closely intertwined with some of the more deplorable acts of racism in our country. And that's a history that's very well documented and not something to run away from. And the reason I say it's not something to run away from is because we're leaps and bounds past that, but we don't talk about it enough, and we don't talk about how, while, a lot of other areas in the country, a lot of other industries in the country are in just as much need of increasing their diversity. A lot of police departments, and I can speak for mine particularly, we're almost a majority minority organization. Have a Black police chief, I have a Black commander and a Hispanic commander, a female commander, and we're majority Hispanic, female, and other. So, we are, again, we're not perfect, but we're much better than some of the media portrayals, and we're much better than we were, 30, 40 years ago, where a lot of the comparisons continue to be made. So, to sum it up, there's a lot of issues that I can point to that made us a viable tool for a lot of folks' political agendas. And, and I think that we've been a very useful tool, whether it's the left or the right. If you support law and order, you get painted as an extreme right winger. And if you detest law and order, then you've just gained a whole lot of friends, because there's a lot of people who find it vogue to hate law enforcement and hate authority. So we are the perfect poster child for those who want to, I guess, resist authority and resist law and order.
Do you feel like putting people in prison is going to help us get a handle on the violent crime that we're seeing now?
I think that we have to accept the fact that prison cannot be excluded from the equation. Do I believe that we can arrest our way or incarcerate our way out of every problem? Of course not. But we've never believed that, and that's another false label that's been put on law enforcement, is that we think we can arrest our way out of problems and all we want to do is put people in prison. That's absolutely not the case. But once upon a time, before the decarceration movement and before the move to shift budgets away from law and order, there were programs in prison. There were programs in prison that allowed for rehabilitation, whether it was drug addiction, whether someone needed to go and find a trade, get their education, have anger management, take courses on family unification. There was a whole host of courses and training options available. And in fact, it was so much so that in most of the prisons throughout the United States, they started changing the name or including the term rehabilitation in almost all of their titles. So if you look, most of the prisons, it's rehabilitation center, or some variation of that is a part of their title, or at least a part of their mission. So I say that to say this, that while prison is not the say-all end-all, there are people who need to be separated from society because they are repeat criminals. They're predators who prey on the innocent, and we can't ignore that. We can't allow people who are a threat to everyone's quality of life and safety to continue to roam the streets without impunity. So I think there has to be a balance. We can't just wipe prison out of the equation like we're doing now, where almost nothing, can get you, put in jail for more than a couple of hours.
Right. That part is so frustrating. I know it frustrates a lot of cops.
It's frustrating for me.
Exactly. Right.
And I want to say something, it's not just frustrating for cops, because when we focus on ourselves, then the perception becomes, oh, see, they just want to lock people up. No, it's not personal. I'm okay no matter what, because I can protect myself, but it's our oath. It's what we signed up to protect communities. When I have business owners who are telling me in tears that their life savings and everything that they worked for is about to go up in smoke because they can't continue to operate with the amount of loss that they're experiencing from daily thefts, that's heart-wrenching. when I have people, we talked earlier about, poor people or people who, are considered on the lower end of the socioeconomic scale. Well, when I have someone who's, worked their whole lives, they own a home, but, hey, they live in an area that has had some decline, but, they're a homeowner, and they've lived here for forever. The house is paid off, but they can't afford to move. Well, now that area has gone into peril and decline because of crime, the criminal element, and we can't do anything about it because we arrest these people and they're right back out on the streets. Again, that's heart-wrenching to tell those people we can't do anything about it. And I'm sick of telling people that we can't do anything about it because of what's happening in Sacramento.
Right, right.
I know you're in a different state, but for me, my legislative problems are coming from Sacramento.
Right. And that's happening all over the nation, and thankfully we have leaders like you that are and your people who are trying to do something about it. So, Chief, I wish we had 3 more hours to talk. But in the last few seconds here, tell people where they can find you, where they can find the department, and if they want to come to your department, how can they apply?
I love it. So you can find me on Twitter at SBPD_chief. And our department is on multiple social media platforms. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram. But most importantly, if you want to join our department, go to joinsbpd.org.
That is fantastic. Chief, I can't thank you enough for spending time with us today. And if you'd like more information about the National Police Association, visit us at nationalpolice.org.
Put the gun down! Put the gun down!
Last year, law enforcement officers were involved in hundreds of thousands of use of force incidents. A use of force incident is when an officer must use nonverbal tactics to gain control of a dangerous situation.
Put the knife on the ground.
In many cases, officers have no choice but to use force when a suspect doesn't comply with a lawful order.
Use of force is always ugly. No one likes it, especially police officers.
Together, we can help de-escalate these dangerous encounters. Help police officers by complying with their lawful orders. Don't attack, attempt to disarm, or flee from an officer.
Use of force is an officer's last option. Most incidents can be avoided by not resisting arrest.
If you feel you've been wrongfully detained by a police officer, then seek a legal solution after the encounter has been resolved.
Let's keep everyone safe. Comply now and complain later.